Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to our Houston Sharpshooters Draft to Glory franchise mode here in NHL 22. So in the last episode, we had the entire offseason, and we had to keep this team as much together as we could. We did end up losing Dmitry Korostin on our bottom six, mainly because of the cap situation, but we actually could have ended up signing him later in free agency if I would have looked, because as you can see, we have still $7 million in cap space, but I did take a look, and he actually signed in San Jose I believe it was, where is he? Let's sort this by, actually there he is right there, 82 overall. He signed for 2.285, so we technically could have brought him back in free agency, but I didn't even realize, so that kind of sucks because we could have had him on our bottom six, and our team would have looked even a little bit better than it is now. But our team still looks pretty good on paper, I think, and our defense might be the best it's ever been. Because obviously this is our forward core. It's mostly stayed the same, I think, for the most of time. But as you can see here on defense, we do have Cohane Blacker, who's now jumped up into the NHL. Very excited to see what this guy could do because he's an OFD, and maybe he could give us a boost on the back end and going into the playoffs and stuff like that. Very excited to see what he can do. Obviously, why he's on the top pairing is just because you could see here that he is the best fit on the top pairing. He doesn't fit the second or third pairing that well, so that's why we have like Hedman and Sedin on the second pairing, and then Roach and Yip on the third pairing. So yeah, hopefully Cohane Blacker could get a lot of development this year because he's 23 years old. He's kind of at that make or break point, and we really want him to reach that elite potential if we can. But obviously, we don't want to be paying him too much money this offseason because we do have some big contracts up for renewal. But yeah, our team looks pretty good on paper, and I'm excited to see what everybody could do. We also gave Blacker some power play time, so hopefully that could give him a little bit of points for his troubles and stuff like that. We did take Sedin off the power play because he's more defensively minded, and now he's on the first line penalty kill unit and whatnot. So I think our team should have a good season ahead, and hopefully it could do good also in the playoffs if we get there. But anyways, before we simulate the season, we do have one comment to go over, and that is from HawksFan88. He says, "This is definitely looking like the strongest team yet. Hopefully this is the year." Which I agree with because I think this team, it almost is probably our best looking team, I think, on paper, but it isn't to an extent because technically if we would have kept Korostin, he would have been here and then Pasquale would have been down on the fourth line. So our team could have been a bit stronger if we kept Korostin, but I really didn't know how we were going to be able to keep Korostin on the team because of all the salary cap stuff. Like there was more than likely we'd let him go like this last off season, or we'd let him go this upcoming off season because of the situation with the cap, because obviously Jääskeläinen is going to be very expensive, Burns is going to be expensive, whoever the other defenseman was, I think, yeah, Yip might be expensive, Soderstrom might be expensive, but we might not be able to bring him back because we do have goalies in the minors that are getting close, so we might end up letting go of Soderstrom at some point. And yeah, basically we might have to win some of these AHL guys into our lineup next season, but hopefully this team could do good this year and get that Stanley Cup, because if we could get at least one cup in this franchise mode, I'll be happy, I think. And I don't think we'll be able to go for multiple pretty much with the limitations this team has. But anyways, those were the comments I got in the last episode because I'm literally recording this like an hour after you guys would have seen the episode if you already watched already and whatnot. So anyways, let's get into this and see how this team simulates. I'm very excited to see how Blacker does especially. And then obviously, hopefully Jääskeläinen doesn't demand too much in the offseason because I'm kind of scared about that because Jääskeläinen is, I think, our best player on our team by far, because he's over point per game in his career playoffs, and in the regular season he usually leads us in points, so I would really like him to stay with his team as long as possible. So we had a perfect preseason, which is nice, but hopefully that transpires into the regular season. 7-0 is pretty nice. And Morales led the team in points with 13 points in 7 games, not a surprise, considering he is playing with some pretty good players. But yeah, hopefully we have a good regular season as well, because usually preseasons like that mean your seasons are not the greatest, but I really hope our team could do good this year. So let's kind of take it a little bit slow just in case we need to make any changes to our team's lineup or whatnot. So let's go to, is that January the 1st or December? Yeah, it's December, okay. We'll go to January the 1st and see how we do in our first half of the season, and then we'll make any adjustments that we need to make. So let's see what happens here. Game 1 against Philadelphia, 5-2 win, nice. But then we lose 5-3, okay. Yeah, it might be a bit of a streaky start to start the season, but like I said, this team is okay if it kind of goes back and forth between winning and losing. But right now we're 2-6, so that's kind of scary. But now we're bouncing back with some wins, okay. So it's kind of similar to last year, I believe, because we started last year off really terribly, and then we ended up winning a lot of games and getting back to 500 again, which we are now. So, yeah, I guess we just have really slow starts to the year. Probably because our legs aren't ready to go for all these games yet. And there's another win. Yeah, kind of a streaky start to the year, but like I said, that might be okay. Because maybe we'll be a team that just barely makes the playoffs to win the Stanley Cup. Because if we win our division, there's almost no chance we're actually going to win the Stanley Cup, I think. So, because usually that doesn't happen that often. Come on, boys, let's get some more wins under our belt. There you go. And 19-17-1. I'm not sure if I really like that fully. Gene Thornton's leading the team in points, which is kind of a surprise. 38 points in 37 games. He's already got 21 goals as well. But we are not in a playoff spot right now. And we're kind of out of a playoff spot by only like 4 points. I might make some line adjustments already just to kind of change this team up a little bit. Let's put Thornton back to the top unit considering he's been producing. Move Sea-Doo down. And how has this line been? Not great, really. We need our depth scoring to get going a little bit. Let's put Pasquale to center, move Ortiz to the wing. And how's Blacker been on that top pairing? 18 points in his first 37 games. That's pretty good. How's the second pairing been? Not terrible. Third pairing's been really good defensively. Okay, not too bad so far, but Park has been terrible as a backup goalie this year. What is going on with him? 1-7 in his first 11 games, and he's got an 8.58 and a 4.27. Well, you look at Soderstrom, who's been our starter. He's 18-10-1 with a 9.08, 2.89. So we really need Park to start playing good, or we might end up having to send him down and call up like somebody like Benson instead. But kind of a bad start for our backup goaltender. Hopefully he could kind of figure himself out a little bit, because we need both goalies to win a decent amount in order to make the playoffs. But we still have a lot of season left to go, so we are going to just take this like 1 month at a time for the rest of the season. But yeah, hopefully our team can get into those playoffs, because like if we miss the playoffs, that's going to be kind of problematic, especially with the cap situation. There you go. There's a lot of wins, a couple losses though, but more wins than losses, which is good. An 8-0 loss to Nashville. I don't like that. That's against a divisional opponent as well. Kind of a weird season so far, but we're now 28-20-2, so we definitely played a lot better that month. We are now in a wild card spot with 58 points. And yeah, we're in a good spot right now, but we need to keep winning games, obviously. Gene Thornton's still over point per game, so he's having his best season yet. I don't know. No, his contract's not up this offseason, right? It might be next year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's next year, I think. Yeah. So we have a lot of big contracts coming up every single offseason, which is kind of scary. So hopefully we can keep most of those big guns together. But yeah, Gene Thornton usually he is kind of a streaky player, and especially in the playoffs. So we really need him to keep going, at least this regular season. And then hopefully in the playoffs he could find his game again, because I believe, let me actually take a quick look at that to add a little bit more time to this episode so we don't have like a short episode. But I believe Gene Thornton's really struggled in the regular season, or not regular season, the playoffs, yeah. He's only got like literally, how much playoff goals? 9 playoff goals in 36 games. Well, regular season wise, he's been scoring like 30 goals a season, which is kind of nuts. Yeah, he's on pace to have his best season yet, which is good. And hopefully he does stuff in the playoffs, like I said. Because if he doesn't, this team might be not that great in the playoffs, who knows. But yeah, we had a much better month that month. Hopefully we can keep it going into the trade deadline, which obviously we aren't going to be making any trades. But let's see if we could add some more wins under our belt. There's a loss and a win. There's another win. Looks like we found out our goaltending a little bit, but our goaltending still hasn't been perfect, but at least maybe it'll be better in the playoffs, who knows. But we were definitely playing much better in the second half of the season than that first half, I think. And yeah, let's just go buyer, and we're going to just go continue simulating because we do not care about the trade deadline. Might have been a blockbuster trade. Nope, there was not. Okay, so 36-23-3 at the trade deadline. That has is now second place in our division, so we're definitely climbing up in the standings. I don't know what the heck is with that bug on the logo. There's kind of like some pixelation going on, so kind of weird there. I've seen it on other created logos as well, so I don't know if that's a bug in the game or what. But Thornton's still over point per game, just barely. We're at 75 points, which is pretty good. We just need to keep on winning games, and we should be a playoff team as we normally are, at least these last few years. Let's go to the 17th, get a couple more wins under our belt, potentially. There's 2 more losses. That's not great. There's a win, a loss, a loss. Yeah, we're kind of a really streaky team this year. And now we're on a 5-game losing streak. I don't really like that. We're kind of choking ourselves out of the playoffs to an extent. Like, we might just barely make the playoffs, or we might just barely miss at this rate. So I'm going to make some more line adjustments quickly, which means putting Pasquale back to the wing. And then, whoa, Jaskalainen's point production has dropped off a cliff, I think, kind of. 52 points this year. Yikes. That is not good. How's Burns been? Burns has almost been better than Jaskalainen. So Jaskalainen's asking price might come down because of that in the offseason, which is good, but that's kind of scary. Tursunbayev in that 4th line has not been phenomenal. I'm going to move Tursunbayev to the wing, even though he's a better face-off man than Ferraro. Second pairing's been good plus-minus wise. Third pairing's been that good. First pairing has been pretty solid as well. Goalie-wise, I think I'll just keep it the same pretty much. But, yeah, I'm kind of scared with this team. It's a very streaky year, which means maybe we'll do better in the playoffs, but we obviously want to be making the playoffs, because if we just barely miss, I am going to be kind of mad because, yeah, this is a 5-game losing streak in the most important month of the season pretty much. Let's go to the 28th against Nashville, see if we could get some wins after those line changes. And there's a 4-0 shutout. I like that. There's a loss again, and there's a win. Okay, now we're kind of bouncing back a little bit. We're still in a wild card spot, so it is definitely a very close finish at the end of the season. Let's get our last 2 games of this month done. A loss and a win. We are still in a wild card spot with the exact same amount of points as the Blackhawks, who are not in the playoffs, but we have 2 games in hand, which is good. And yeah, in terms of the other division, it's 4-point differential, so that's kind of interesting. Yeah, this is going to be a very tight race for the end of it. Hopefully Chicago just all of a sudden loses like 4 games in a row. Let's do 1 game at a time. Game against Seattle, we lose 1-0. I don't like that. Come on, guys. We need to use these games in hand to get ourselves into the playoffs. Game against Minnesota. We win 3-1. That's a huge win. We are 1 point above the Blackhawks with 1 game in hand as well. It's really going to come down to probably the last day of the season or something like that. Game against Arizona. Can we win this game? Yes, we can. 8-5 win. That is huge, and we've jumped into the first wildcard spot now with 91 points, which puts us in a very good spot. If we could get at least 1 more win here or 1 more point in overtime or a shootout, I think we clinched. We are tied in games played with the Wild and the Blackhawks as well, and both those teams are chasing us in a sense. Game against Tampa Bay is a 3-2 win, and that will clinch us a playoff spot with our 93rd point on the season. Not the best season in terms of simulation, but maybe it'll be a good in terms of the playoffs, because we're definitely a much better team than it looks, I would say. And we lose in a shootout in the last game of the season 4-3. But we finished with 94 points, and we finished with a record of 45, 33, and 4. Not too bad. Let's get the rest of the NHL done. There you go. And now we'll take a look at the standings in the player stats, and then we'll see who we are facing in the first round of playoffs. But entire league-wise, where did we finish? We finished all the way at number 13, so it wasn't our best season, but we still made the playoffs, so maybe we'll have a good run in the postseason. I don't know, but hopefully we do. Goals for per game, we scored 3.21, which is not too bad, so we're a pretty good offensive team. Goals against per game wise, we were actually the 3rd best defensive team in the entire NHL, which I really didn't expect with where we finished in the standings, but that's actually really good to see. Power play percentage, it was not great. It looked like it was 16%, was it? So our special teams might need some work. Yeah, our power play really needs some work, so I might address our power play unit. Penalty kill wise, though, we had one of the best penalty kills in the league, so we just need to get our power play going, and I think we'll be a good team. We had 13 shorthanded goals, though, this year, which led the league. So that's pretty impressive. 22, 16, and 3 on home ice, 23, 17, and 1 on the road. Not too bad. Pretty good year, I would say, for the most part. Let's take a look at our player stats. So starting off with our centerman, Chad Burns led centers with 69 points. And of course, his contract comes to an end this offseason. He's going to be asking for a lot of money. He was a plus 33 this year as well. He's now a career plus 103 on this draftable rate team, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, he's going to probably demand a decent amount of money in the offseason. Jaskalainen's asking price might come down because he just had his worst year yet, 59 points. Yeah, he hasn't had that low of a point total ever in his career, I think. Actually, since his first year, that's his worst season in a long time. Interesting. But he was a plus 14 this year, which is something that he's not been plus a lot. Pasquale, 33 points is pretty solid. Ortiz, 28 points. Petain, 19. Ferraro, 17. And Tursenbayev, 16, so not too bad. From our centerman, left wing wise, Gene Thornton had 81 points and 42 goals this year. Good to see him starting to score again because he hadn't scored 40 goals in 5 years. So it's good to see him getting going, and hopefully he could do that in the playoffs like I was mentioning earlier. Morales, 73 points. He might actually demand a lot of money in the offseason because of that point total. Yeah, he put up a lot more points this year, even though he played less minutes. And he also had 3 shorthanded goals this year out of our 13. So a good season from Kyler Morales, who's actually 29 years of age now. So he's getting closer to retirement age, which is kind of scary. Sea-Doo, 64 points and plus 26. A little bit less than last year. Probably less ice time, I would assume. But not too bad from Sea-Doo. We need him to get going in the postseason for sure as well. Forster, 29 points ain't too bad. Capitanov, 56 points. So he actually might not ask for too much in the offseason because he's not really a huge point producer, but he does put up a decent amount of numbers. So hopefully he could not ask for too much in the offseason. And now on to our defensive core. Teratukin, 62 points this year in a plus 14. I really like Teratukin. He puts up a lot of points. He's also really good in terms of plus minus the last few years. He's now got 483 points in 738 games, and he's not over point per game, but he's almost point per game in the postseason as well, which is pretty nice. So pretty good stuff from Teratukin. Blacker in his first season, 34 points. Not too bad. 11 goals, 23 assists. Not as much points as I was expecting, but I will take that from the back end for sure. Hopefully he gets some good development in this offseason. Hedman, 27 points, plus 17. Really like that from Hedman. Yip had 22 points and was a plus 25 on that third pairing. Like that. And then Sedin, 20 points and a plus 12. Sedin's never really putting up a whole lot of points, but he's solid defensively. I might have overpaid for him when I gave him 7.15, but I will still take his point totals for sure. And then Reed Roach, 18 points and a plus 25. Reed Roach has been actually kind of underrated in terms of his defensive play the last 4 years. Goalie-wise, Soderstrom, 35, 20, and 4, 5 shutouts, and 914 save percentage into 265. That's pretty good stats. That's his best season yet, I think. Other than last year was around the same. Better goals against last year, but a worse save percentage. So, yeah, Soderstrom had a really good year, and hopefully he doesn't demand too much money in the offseason because I only gave him a 1-year deal. We might end up losing him at some point. And then Park kind of rebounded in terms of getting wins in shutouts and stuff like that, but his goals against and save percentage is still not great. But obviously that could improve, and hopefully he could be better next season. He hasn't really developed much more since becoming that backup goalie, which is unfortunate. And we actually had a combined 6 assists from our goaltenders this season as well, which is kind of neat. How much assists does Soderstrom have in his career out of curiosity? He has a decent amount of assists, 12 assists. He's a good passer of a goalie. He actually helps out with the offense. Like to see that. Interesting. How about the entire league? Let's just take a quick look at this. Just because I'm kind of curious on who's leading in points or led in points. So Elias led in points with 111. Jenks up there for Colorado. Hutchinson for Buffalo. Shane Wright. Connor McDavid. Okay. Most goals so far this season, or goals this season in general. Jenks had 59 goals. Dominguez 58. Interesting. Best defenseman for points this year was Adam Fox with 70. Brant Clark up there with 67. Cale Makar as well. Teratukin was up there, which is pretty good. Best goalie this year for wins was Jeremy Swayman with 43. Most shutouts by a goalie was Ukko-Pekka Lakonen. Soderstrom was actually right up there in shutouts. Best save percentage by a starting goaltender might be this Nick Eaton guy since he played 49 games. But other than that, Michael DiPietro and Soderstrom are both up there in terms of save percentage. And then goals against per game, it's looking like Sebastian Kosa might win the Vezina. Or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. One of the two of those guys, I think. Or maybe this Hamel guy. And the best rookie for points this year was Toby Dillon in Dallas with 64 points, but Pettersson up there as well for Nashville and Adamski. Interesting. So that is that. Let me take a quick look at progress reports as well before we see who we're up against, because I'm kind of curious if anybody in the AHL is getting a lot of development, because I'm curious if some of them like Scuderi got any growth or not. Let's sort by overall. So Schutz is still 78, so he's probably going to stay around there. Ronnie's still 78. Zador didn't grow anymore. Benson's up to a 77, so he might end up being a backup goalie for next year. Scuderi is getting close to being an NHL player. He's a 76. Ladd is close as well. Not too bad. Good to see that our prospects are getting growth, and hopefully we can get some of them into our lineup as soon as possible. But that is that, and now we got to take a look at who we are facing in round one. Who are we facing? It's going to be none other than the Colorado Avalanche, of course. This team took us out last year, scoring 5.5 goals per game in the first round. And then obviously the year before, we took them out in the first round, I think it was. So, yeah, we've definitely played Colorado quite a bit in the postseason. They're 49, 29, and 4 on the season. Let me take a look at their season stats by compared to us first before we take a look at their forward core and all that, because I'm kind of curious on what was doing well for them. It's probably a mix of everything. So they scored 3.27 goals for per game. We scored 3.21, so kind of close on that front. We had a better goals against than them, which is kind of surprising, considering I think they still have Carter Hart. They had a much better power play, 26.6% for theirs, 16.2 for ours, so we definitely need our power play to get going, and we had a bit of a better penalty kill. And we had way more shorthanded goals. They obviously had better home record and away record as well. Let's take a look at what that lineup looks like. I'm assuming it's pretty similar to last year. Maybe some changes, but not a whole lot, I would guess. Let's see what they got. Okay, so, yeah, they lost last year in the Stanley Cup Finals, didn't they? To the Rangers? I think so, if I'm remembering this correctly. So we are playing a former conference finalist. So first line has Brody Sanders. Is this guy new there? Yeah, this guy's a new player that they added to the team. Interesting. They brought him in at the trade deadline from the Washington Capitals. They still have Nathan McKinnon, but he is dropping off a little bit. And Rantanen's also dropping off. Interesting. Second line has Oleg Korobov, Louis Jenks, who is up there for Rookie of the Year because he had 59 goals somehow. Geez, power play? Yeah, he had 20 power play goals. Interesting. How did this guy all of a sudden just do that? Like, he looked like an okay scorer, but all of a sudden randomly put up almost 60 goals with Colorado. That's kind of nuts. Kirby Dach is also down there on that second line. And they also have Samu Taipalus. They have Matthew Ward and Rod McKinnon. Is this guy a real player? I don't know. Don't think so. He might be. Fourth line has Capo Caco, Patrick Perez, and Danil Gushin. So I'm still not a huge fan of their forward core, but it seems to work for them. Because like last year they scored a lot of goals for. This year they scored a good amount of goals for as well. And if they're getting 59 goals from somebody like Louis Jenks, this team is still pretty good, even though that forward core is not the greatest forward core I've ever seen. Defensively, they still have Valimaki and Lundqvist. They also have Jerry Berahowski. That was a little bit of a tongue twister. And Samuel Girard. And then they also have Marvin DePenta and Alex Traynor. So they must be right up against the salary cap because this team looks a little bit worse than they did last year. I believe this defensive core dropped off a lot, unless they have injuries. Goalie-wise, they still have Carter Hart, and they also have Connor Ingram. And depth-wise, they have Declan Summers, Nikita Korolev, and Liam Foudy. So, yeah, they must have had some injury troubles, or not injury troubles. They must have had cap-related issues to keep this team together, because I believe this team looked a lot better last year when they knocked us out. Like, let's take a look at the contract situation for them. I feel like they're right up against the cap or something. They still have $11 million in cap space, so that's kind of surprising. They just went through a lot of changes, I guess. So I think that's pretty much it for this episode of our Houston Sharpshooters Draft to Glory. So in next episode, we will take it to the first round of the playoffs against the Colorado Avalanche as we look to pull off the upset, considering we are technically the underdog team for most of this playoff run, probably. So let me guessing down below, and I'll see you guys next time.